Hello, everyone. Happy Friday morning to all our audiences. Welcome to yet another exciting session on Master Speak. A special guest for today on the show will talk to us about how this pandemic has accelerated change across all businesses and what does future of work look like. For those of you joining us for the first time, I'm sure you will thoroughly enjoy these sessions. And if you want to know more about our earlier sessions, do know that all of them are available on our LinkedIn and Facebook pages. So use your weekend productively to learn and be prepared for a better, brighter, stronger future. Now, I hope all of you who are watching us today and your families are absolutely safe and healthy. Do give us a thumbs up by pressing the like icon if all is well with you and your family. Do let us know which part of the country you joined us from today. Mention that in the comment section. Tell us your city name so we know and our speaker gets to know where all you joined us from. Share your comments and questions. You know the drill by now, hopefully. So share your questions and comments with us throughout the session. I'm going to filter those questions and post it to our guest speaker for today. Remember, 2 lucky questions picked by me at the end of the show will be eligible for a surprise gift voucher. So when you ask a question, do share your email ID along with the question because that would help us ship the email voucher or email the voucher to you if you are one of the 2 lucky winners. So stay tuned till the end of this session for a learningful, delightful experience. It gives me great pleasure and it's my privilege today to announce our esteemed guest speaker, Jaspreet Bindra, to you. Jaspreet Bindra is the author of best-selling book, The Tech Whisperer. Now, if you haven't had an opportunity to read this book, I will strongly recommend that you do that over the weekend. In fact, you should do it right after the show. Jaspreet is a leading expert and a leading voice on digital transformation, blockchain, future of work, AI. He has been recognized as the inaugural Digitalist of the Year by Mint and SAP in 2017. He is a leading speaker on digital and technology and has keynoted and spoken at 250 plus corporate events and conferences across India, US, UK, Africa, Sri Lanka, and Southeast Asia. He is also the co-founder of Uncube, a company which prepares future-ready organizations, and the founder of Digital Matters, which does advisory and consulting work on digital transformation and digital technologies like AI, blockchain, etc. Until 2018, Jaspreet was the Chief Digital Officer of the $20 billion Mahindra Group of companies, and he continues to work with Mahindra Group of companies as an advisor. Now, I can perhaps go on for the next 15 minutes, and the introduction will not get over. So let's straight away dive into the session. Here, straight from the master, Jaspreet, thank you very much. It's a privilege to have you on the show. I love the work that you have done. It's an honor to have you with us, and I'm sure our audience are going to love what you have to share with them. Over to you, Jaspreet.
Thank you very much, Rakesh. Just before you hand over to me, if you can just let me know if you everyone can hear me well.
Hey, Jaspreet, the voice is very clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ashish. Okay, so guys, thank you. It's a privilege to be here. I've been looking forward to this for the last few weeks, and there's some wonderful speakers which have been coming on the show. I hope I can live up to your expectations and we can have some fun over the next hour and a half. Give me a bit. I'm going to share my screen so that I can show you my presentation. Just a moment. Yep. Okay, I trust that you can see my screen now, and it was a great introduction. So I'm not going to go through about myself all over again. The Tech Whisperer was my first book, and the Immune Organization is actually my second one, which has been one of the products of this lockdown that we are going to be talking about. And I'm actually going to touch upon both of these books. As we discuss the future of work today and how it has been fast forwarded by this pandemic and the lockdowns that have happened because of this pandemic. As this pandemic has been raging all around us, and almost a once in a generation kind of an event, uh, the whole world, including all of us, is actually racing to find a vaccine, because it's the vaccine which can then help save us from the virus and help us go back to our normal lives. Vaccines, as you know, do not cure a disease. Vaccines prevent it. And the way vaccines work is that you are inoculated with weak bacteria or weak viruses of the disease. Your body sees those viruses or bacteria for the first time, and the immune system starts producing these new kind of antibodies to act against these viruses or bacteria. Now, because these bacteria or viruses are dead or very weakened, the new antibodies kind of overcome them. You fall a little ill, but then the good thing is that next time when a disease like this strikes you again, the antibodies are ready and strong, and they can kind of overcome and kill all these bacteria, viruses, these pathogens, and therefore make your body immune. So the idea which I'm going to explore here with you today is that, look, what if, even as we are racing to find a vaccine, what if we consider or treat COVID itself as a vaccine for us, our societies, and our organizations? And so can our organizations learn from this pandemic and start producing antibodies today, so that next time a disruption like this strikes, we are ready and our organizations are ready, and therefore we can create an immune organization. So that's really the concept of the immune organization, about learning from the current disruption, not just sitting idle, but doing stuff, producing antibodies so as to build an immune organization. Through this talk, you'll see me keeping on referring to one of my favorite books, which is Lord of the Rings. And, like Gandalf says in Lord of the Rings, the burned hand teaches best. And so our hands are burning now. They're in the fire now. And what can we learn from it? So let us explore this, this more specifically in the context of future of work. But before we do that, I want to introduce you to this concept of black and gray swans. Now, some of you or most of you would be already aware of Nassim Taleb's concept of black swans. And many of us think that this pandemic is a black swan itself. Black swan events, according to Nassim Taleb, are events which are both very disruptive as well as unpredictable. Like, for example, the Fukushima nuclear disaster that happened, or Brexit for that matter. The 2008 collapse, Lehman Brothers collapse, 9/11 was a classical black swan event. Many of us are actually calling this COVID event also a black swan event, and saying that, look, this is our next black swan. Actually, Nassim Taleb does not call the COVID pandemic a black swan. He says that this is actually a gray swan, because while this pandemic is disruptive, it has always been predicted. And so it was not unpredictable. And, Bill Gates predicted it a few, 4 or 5 years back. A bunch of others have also, been predicting this. Sorry, just give me a moment. I need to shut something because it's coming in the way. Yeah. And so it's what has been called a gray swan. So in my book, however, I think that while the COVID has been a gray swan event, the lockdowns that it has caused have actually been both unpredictable and disruptive, and therefore have been black swans. Now, why I'm mentioning black swans is that while there are these unpredictable, disruptive events, what do we do about them? How can we help? Do we have an antidote or a vaccine against something like them? And Talev, in his next book, introduced this concept of antifragility. And again, some of you would have heard about antifragile systems or organizations. What he said was that, look, most of our systems, organizations, etc., societies many times are fragile. They're damaged by any disruption or disorder. We tend to think that the opposite of fragile is actually robust, but that's not true. Robust basically means, so fragile, while it will get damaged, robust will be resilient or it will stand. But antifragile, which is actually the opposite of fragile, is something which benefits from the disruption that is caused. And Talev actually talks about many antifragile possibilities, and he says that the human body or even nature, and there are a few examples which are given here, how it actually builds antifragility, how to benefit from disruption. And so this is the second theme, in a sense, immunity as the first theme, antifragility as the second theme, as to how we can again learn and see if we can build our organizations and ourselves in many ways, not only to be robust or resilient or immune, but also anti-fragile. How can we gain from the disruptions that are caused? And the biggest disruption right now is is obviously the COVID disruption. So this is what we are going to be exploring. And I already spoke about vaccines a little bit earlier as to how do they work. And I'm not going to actually go into details again. But if you remember the basic concept, weak or dead germs are introduced, sparks your immune system to develop antibodies. Antibodies fight off the germs that it invades again. And so what are the antibodies that we can build today, learning from COVID, which can help us next time? And in my book, The Immune Organization, I talk about 7 such antibodies. And you can see them in front of you. These 7 antibodies are from an organizational context, from a business context, but frankly, many of them can be extended to your life, to your society, and even to your country for that matter. And I'm not going to I'm going to talk a bit about them as we go further, but, tweaking, digitalizing business models, changing customer journeys, building a web of partnerships, automation, lifelong learning. There are a bunch of these 7 antibodies that I have detailed in my little book. And some of these we are going to talk today, again, from a concept of the future of work. So these are the 7 antibodies that, I have talked about in my book. Decentralization is a big one of work, of decision-making, of authority, organization. Digital transformation through reimagining business models is another. How do you make your business models more and more digital? In fact, reimagining customer experience, because customer journeys are going to change because of COVID, and organizations will have to completely reimagine a new customer journey, and therefore be ready for disrupted customer journeys as we go forward. Building partnership ecosystems is very interesting. Some of you might have read about how, for example, ITC has partnered with Domino's to kind of deliver their ready-to-eat foods at home, something which would never have happened in a non-disruptive or a non-COVID scenario, but something which, as they develop more, will actually help them in the next disruption if retail shops shut again for some reason or something happens. Digitization, automation, very important. A lot of us have talked about that. 6 is interesting. We're going to spend more time on it in terms of lifelong learning, reskilling, multiple jobs. And 7 is about the transformation. The most powerful antibody of them all is about the transformation of mindset and culture. So if you kind of think of these 7 antibodies as ones which we can develop learning from today's disruption to help us become immune for the next one, let us kind of now bring in the lens of the future of work, which is what this session is about, really, into these concepts that I spoke about immunity, about anti-fragility, etc. Now, whenever we think of the future of work, someone says future of work to you, most of us think of this cartoon which is there in the left-hand side of the slide as to how robots and automation and AI is going to kind of take over all work from human beings, and we'll be just left like complete slaves or vegetables in that sense. Now, that's a bit of an extreme version, but the future of work is far more than that. And what has really happened is that COVID has fast-forwarded the future of work to the present. And let us explore how. So, if you remember, the first antibody that I spoke about in my 7 antibodies was decentralization. Now, decentralization is of many things. It's a work decision-making, authority, organization. Look, decentralized work is all around us. Suddenly, almost overnight, all of us have kind of immediately started working from home. Offices have closed down because they had to. And work which was centralized in offices has suddenly decentralized to become work from anywhere and work from home. And the decentralization of work has actually been a very powerful antibody reaction which we have had to develop so that business continuity can be managed and our business continues to run. Now the interesting thing is that even as we talk about decentralized work now, people are talking about decentralized work even post-COVID, and we're going to talk about that and how that will impact how organizations become more resilient and sometimes even anti-fragile. But it's not only work which has decentralized. Many other things have because of this disruption. Retail, the malls have closed down. The kirana stores are the one which have saved our lives, frankly. Hospitality, as we go further, we will, rather than staying in centralized large hotels, we would prefer to be in decentralized homestays. As the unfortunately poor workers migrate to their hometowns, it's possible that factories will need to get decentralized and go to where the workers are rather than workers coming to where the factory is. But more important than the structural decentralization is also how decision-making, delegation has also become decentralized. Anecdotally, there have been many CEOs who have told me that before COVID, before this whole work from home and this decentralization, they would at best know the names of their 7 or 10 or 15 direct reports. Now they know the names and phone numbers and they talk to 100 people in their organization. Decision-making has become, and delegation has become more, decision-making has become much more decentralized. And this is very interesting because if you read Taleb's book, he basically says that decentralization is the very basis of antifragility. To build antifragility where you can gain from disruption, you need to embrace decentralization, and every single employee needs to become a problem solver. So I think decentralization is the first antibody that I've talked about, but also importantly, the first concept of future of work. The future of work was always supposed to be decentralized. We were heading towards that with, co-working spaces, working from coffee shops, some of us working from home, etc. But because of COVID, that has been totally fast forwarded. And this is something which we need to continue as we go forward. The other antibody, one of the other antibodies amongst the 7, which is again linked to the future of work, is actually about lifelong learning, reskilling, multiple jobs. Now, this is very interesting. One of the things that work is going to do, and I'm going to talk about it again later, is that it's going to become more and more increasingly automated. And this was happening, with RPA, some AI-based technologies, which are actually automating all menial tasks, and in fact even getting into more creative tasks getting automated because of AI. Now, because of COVID, what's going to happen is that post-COVID, organizations are going to only increase this automation. They're going to push this automation even more. And what that means is, unfortunately, that more people will lose jobs because of automation. And to counter that, the antibody for that, in a sense, is that, look, we will have to, as employees or as individuals, not depend on other people for our livelihood, our jobs, and our learning, but we, in fact, will have to do lifelong learning. This whole COVID will shake this foundation of one company, many employees. And it's actually going to move to this future of work concept of one employee, many companies. So a person working with multiple people, the gig economy, for example, with the Ubers and the Zomatos and the various other gig economy companies are symptoms of that, where one person works for multiple companies or employers rather than just one. And most important thing is that, as I said, the employees themselves, you as individuals themselves, will be responsible for your jobs and skills, not companies. And that will mean that it's not sufficient that you've done your engineering and you've done your MBA or CA or whatever, and basically your education is complete, and now after this you only sit and work and get salary every month. Those days are gone. You'll have to embrace lifelong learning or lifelong education. And every year, you'll have to learn something from your own pocket. And that's the only way you'll remain relevant and contemporary and therefore employable. And in fact, not only employable, but much sought after, because many companies will want your skills rather than one company. So you'll have to wander from specialization to specialization, from role to role, from employer to employer, rather than lifelong employment. And again, Bilbo, who's one of the hobbits in Lord of the Rings, has this very famous statement saying that, look, not all those who wander are lost. In fact, wandering will become the way we work going forward. Another antibody, which I talk about, which COVID has, which is a future of work related trait, and which COVID has again fast forwarded, is the transformation of mindset and culture. And I talk about it as the most powerful antibody. Just this whole shift to work from home, for example, has meant a massive cultural shift. Decentralized decision making is again a massive cultural shift, which we talked about. Today people will trade off resilience with efficiency. Its work has to continue. Maybe it does not continue this in the same efficient way that it did. Another anecdotal example that I have here is of a large manufacturing company CEO, a very large company, a very prominent CEO, who for his lifetime had always insisted of working 9 a.m. to 7 p.m. from office 6 days a week. And the office needed to be next to the factory, because, the factory was where the stuff was built. Everyone needed to be there. And they worked for 7 days a week. The office needed to work for at least 6. And work from home was taboo. Now, everyone was forced to work from home. And he put out a tweet a month or a couple of months back saying that, look, I have changed my mind. Sometimes in the right balance, work from home can be amazing. It can be more productive. I've done board meetings from home. And, this sometimes culture change is very slow, and, you need culture change for work to change. And a disruption like this can make that culture change happen. And if it can make it happen, it's the single most powerful antibody. It's that one ring, which if you have read Lord of the Rings, there was this one ring which was the single most powerful ring. And that powerful ring, the one which rules them all, is actually about this miraculous transformation of mindset and culture. So as I said, just to kind of wrap this bit off, as I said that, look, COVID has changed the world. In fact, there's a very curious paradox, which I talk about in the Immune Organization, that COVID has slowed down the world, but accelerated change. It has slowed down the world, but accelerated change. And we have to change and build these antibodies. And some of these, as I said, the ones in yellow, are actually related directly to the future of work. As Gildor again says in Lord of the Rings, the world has changed about you. The whole wide world is all about you. You can fence yourself in and just say that, look, nothing has changed. It'll all come back. But you cannot. You can fence yourself in, but you cannot forever fence it out. The world has changed, and we need to change and produce the right antibodies now. I'm going to go a little deeper into the future of work and introduce a book which was called Reinventing Organizations. It's by a Frenchman called Peter Lello. I read Reinventing Organizations maybe 4 years back. Someone gifted it to me. And it actually changed the way I thought about work, and I started working on the future of work since then. And I want to introduce this also as a third concept after immune organization and antifragility, and tell you how all these things are actually linked. So it's very interesting. But Peter Lello talks about different kind of organizations, and he says that, look, organizations as in our offices and organizations and corporates, they reflect society. So initially, when we were kind of living as tribes, our organizations also were tribal. And they were what he calls red organizations. They were like a wolf pack. The one guy who was the leader was supreme. If he told you to shoot yourself, you have to go shoot yourself or kill yourself. And because the tribes were like that, organizations were like that. And these red organizations, by the way, still exist. And the mafia, for example, is a red organization, completely driven by one leader. And as we changed and we kind of embraced agriculture, etc., organizations changed and they became a little bit more, slightly more freer, slightly more democratic, but still with one supreme leader. And and you had to obey that leader. There were no appraisals, or you couldn't question authority, etc. And that's how life became. And organizations also became that way. And these amber organizations still exist today, like the army, for example, or the church, for example. I mean, you don't hear of the priests in a church having performance appraisals at any time. Life changed again. And what were called orange organizations came in, which had, and sometimes he refers to them as orange, sometimes he refers to them as blue. But basically, these orange-blue organizations are the ones when industrialization came in. And when that came in, bureaucracies happened, and a typical GE, GM kind of organizations were born. Slightly more democracy, more meritocracy, more accountability happened in factories, happened in organizations. These orange gave way to a blue, which is when the PC came in. And when the PC came in, again, the organizations like the Microsofts of the world, much more democratic, much more innovative, performance appraisals, etc. The internet brought with them something called green organizations, like the Googles of the world, which were more like a family. And there, it was far more a values-driven culture. Everyone was thought to be an entrepreneur, 20% free time, what you can do, etc. The organizations of the future, according to Peter Lellaw, are going to be what are called the teal organizations. And teal organizations would be like a living organism. And they'll be self-organized. And in a teal organization, no one will have a job profile in a sense. And no one will be, and very few people will be permanent employees. In a teal organization, you could work for 4 or 5 different employers at the same time, and you'll be working for purpose rather than for values or for money. And money is important, but the purpose will be far more important. And actually, the future of work, and within that, therefore, the future of organizations is about teal organizations. And, there are a few of them. Let me give you an example. I mean, I have a law firm, for example, I work with in Canada, which is like a 40-member firm. Each one of them is a partner. There's just one layer. Every year, they select someone or elect someone to be like their CEO, who kind of represents them. But otherwise, they're all the same level. They all decide how much hours a week they need to work. Some say 20 hours, some say 80 hours, some say 60 hours. And all the other hours, so if someone is working 20 hours a week, the other hours a week, they might be doing gardening, or they might be writing a book, or they might be working for another company, or a third, or might be working for 2 more companies. Some work out of home, some work out of co-working spaces, some work out of coffee shops. They've taken a few conference rooms in the WeWorks around Canada, where people can do meetings with clients, etc., if they want. And they all carry the CVL card. They have a CVL mail ID, but they have other identities also. They kind of work also for CVL, and they work for 4 or 5 others. And if you remember what I'm talking about earlier in terms of how the future of work is going to be, working for multiple organizations, one organization, many employees, giving way to one employee, many organizations. CVL law actually is an example of that. And very frankly, one of the reasons I work with them, besides they being very good, is that they charge much lesser because they have no overheads. They have no fancy offices. They have no big brand campaigns. They have no cafeterias. And, they don't add that overhead to the fees that they charge me. And so they are like at half the price that everyone else is. And this is how the organizations of the future are going to be across multiple sectors. And the early symptoms of that, again, we see in these Uberish kind of companies, which are, which actually work in a very, very similar manner. And so, as I said, this teal organization where, organization structures the way they are hierarchical today, with the CEO having vast powers, is actually going to move to a much more organic ecosystem, which is going to be far, far more decentralized. And you remember that word decentralization keeps on coming again and again and again. Uh, so if you kind of think of the future of work again, and we try to summarize whatever we have spoken in the future of work, I actually have what I call the 9 principles of the future of work, and I've kind of written about them a lot. And even pre-COVID, work was very slowly changing. And what was happening to work? The future of work was always supposed to be, as I said, decentralized, distributed. And because it was decentralized, people would have to use technology to collaborate. The work was always on. There were no office timings. There was no job for life, and therefore there was lifelong learning was super important. Work was much more fluid. The gig economy would grow. Interestingly, there would be no concept of permanent staff and temporary staff the way it is today, outsourced staff versus permanent, because everyone in a sense would become semi-outsourced. Automation will become bigger and bigger, as I said, and organizations hopefully will be working for a purpose rather than just for money. And if you see, as I kind of summarize, COVID has fast forwarded this future of work. And so if you see the decentralized distributed work from home, suddenly we are in Zoom land and MS Team lands and WebEx land. All of these stocks and their usage has gone up significantly. And we're using them to actually work with the people rather than face to face. Always on, it's kind of getting tiresome, as we all know, because we can't stop working. We are supposed to be on 24/7 today. No job for life as companies bleed, and you know that we're going to lose jobs. We started losing jobs. A job is not a given, and lifelong learning, therefore, as I said earlier, becomes more and more important. Permanent and temp staff becoming same. Automation, after COVID, automation is going to be the #1 priority for all organizations worldwide. And the interesting thing that COVID has also brought about is that organizations have suddenly discovered a purpose. And many organizations have said, okay, if I can't make money, let me just, help. How can I help in this pandemic? So Diageo, which makes alcohol, is busy making sanitizers, for example. Mahindra has tied up with an entrepreneur to build, she used to make sanitary napkins, repurposing it to make masks, for example, in their auto factory. And so companies are discovering that, look, these kind of disruptions, and the big one still to come, which is the global warming related stuff, organizations will need to start working for a purpose, and COVID has accelerated a trend. As I said, it has fast forwarded the future of work. The last bit that I want to come to in our talk, so we talked about the immune organization, we talked about antifragility and how that kind of comes in. We talked about the various antibodies that we will need to develop, future of work oriented. We specifically spoke about future teal organizations and how those are the future of work. And then the last bit I want to talk about is really the technologies that are changing work. And every technology is changing work. By the way, work is a big, big thing. We don't realize how big an industry work is. In fact, work is supposed to be between a $5 to $10 trillion industry, remembering basis how you count it. And so when work changes, everything changes. And the big technologies that are changing work are what are here: AI, blockchain, RPA, robotics, IoT, and extended reality, which includes virtual reality, mixed reality, etc. What I'm going to do is, for the sake of time, and also because I don't want to feed you a lot of information, I'm not going to talk about each of these. But the one of these, which we will spend a few minutes on, which is going to change work more than anyone else, though all the others also will play a part, is obviously AI. And again, this is not a talk about AI. So I'm not going to talk about what is AI and what does it mean. And I'm only going to talk about AI in the context of work and in the context of jobs, therefore. We knew that AI will change everything this time. And some of you might recognize these graphics. What you see here is an AI engine owned by something called DeepMind, which is now owned by Google. So Google DeepMind, which is called AlphaGo. And it is playing the word champion, 19-time world champion of a game called Go. Now, I don't know how many of you know what Go is, but Go is a strategy game. It's an advanced version of chess. So if chess has a 12 by 12 board, Go has 19 by 19. And it's not deterministic like chess is. It's very instinctive. It's very human. You have to capture territory. And they say that there are more moves possible in Go than there are atoms in the universe. So you can imagine how complex and how intuitive and creative this game is. And no one ever thought that AI could defeat a human being in Go. And about 4 years back, AlphaGo did that. It defeated Lee Sedol, who is the #1 world guy forever, the all-time great in Go, comprehensively in 3 or 4 out of 5 game match, which happened in Seoul in Korea. And actually, Lee Sedol cried at the end of this tournament because he realized that what AI could do. And interestingly, last year he has retired from Go, saying that look, from now on, AI will be the champion. No human being can be the champion. I'm retiring. So when this happened, this was like the big moment where the world shifted, and people realized that AI will change our life much more than we had thought, and our work, and take our jobs. So yeah, what he's given us, what Kai-Fu Lee has given us is this beautiful matrix. And this x-axis is optimization or mechanistic stuff or computing stuff at one end, and creativity or strategy at the other. And we used to think that all these jobs will always be with humans, and these jobs will be taken away by AI. But then we saw what happened with Lee Sedol, etc., and Go. And so he's put this axis of compassion or of love, which no AI will ever have. And then, the high ones, as he says, will always be human. And then these ones will be both human and AI. These ones will be completely AI. And again, these will be both human and AI, in a certain ratio. And therefore, coming to what he considers to be the top 10 jobs of the future, these are the 10 jobs. This is Kai-Fu Lee's diagnosis of these are the 10 jobs which are never going to be taken away by AI, which will always remain human. And this is the future of jobs within the future of work, in a sense. And, if you're doing these, that's great. If you're not, that's fine. We still have some time, but perhaps your children or the younger people you should be pushing them towards some of these human jobs in a sense of the future, because the future of work clearly will mean that AI and human beings will be working together. But there are certain things which AI will do alone. And then there are certain things which only humans would do. And these are the ones, according to Kai-Fu Lee, that only humans will do. And so what I wanted to do, therefore, was from a company viewpoint. There's a particular matrix or a particular direction that one of my partners, ThoughtWorks, uses, and which I really like, and which is how we can start looking at changing our company from a purely business company to a company which actually becomes an organization which actually becomes technology at core. Because if we kind of go and build that, then many of the things that I've said, how to develop antibodies, how to make organizations immune, how to kind of survive in the future of work, and how our organization survive the next big disruption will happen if we kind of absorb and embrace technology and make it the core of our organization, rather than it being all over, or it being separated or divorced from the way our organizations function. I'm going to show you another video, and that's pretty much, I'll end my presentation with that. And this is, and I want to show you this video because to give you a little bit of urgency, if it may, that look, COVID has changed the world and you need to act now. And this particular small video, much smaller than the earlier one, is by a guy called Joy Ito. Joy Ito, until recently, was the CEO of MIT Media Labs. And again, this is a TED Talk. It's an 18-minute talk or 14-minute talk. But again, I'm only going to show you about 35 seconds of that. So here you go.
So I think the good news is that even though the world is extremely complex, what you need to do is very simple. I think it's about stopping this notion that you need to plan everything, you need to stock everything, you need to be so prepared, and focus on being connected, always learning, fully aware, and super present. So I don't like the word futurist. I think we should be nowists, like we are right now. Thank you.
So this is what I wanted to share with you, ladies and gentlemen. To recapitulate, we are facing a massive disruption right now. This is not the last disruption. In fact, it's the first of many. And we can be nowists and learn from these disruptions to build our antibodies like what a vaccine does, so that when the next big disruption happens, we will be ready. This is true from an organizational context, how organizations would become need to become deal organizations, much more decentralized, absorb technology, etc. It's definitely true from an individual context, because we were kind of, work was going to change for us. It was changing slowly for us, but COVID has greatly accelerated the future of work. And so what was going to happen in the future has started happening now, like work from home, etc. And we need to quickly pivot, quickly change, and become the employees or the entrepreneurs of the way work was going to be in the future. Many technologies are going to make that happen. AI is probably the most powerful. We have to start learning to live with it as we work, rather than trying to keep it away, because that's not going to happen. And to end, I'm again going to come to Lord of the Rings. And my most favorite quote there, which I'll read out to you, is the following. "I wish it need not have happened in my time," said Frodo. Frodo was a hobbit. "So do I," said Gandalf the wizard. "And so do all who live to see such times. But that is not for them to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given us." So this is the time that has been given to you. Learn from it, use it, leverage it. And obviously, if you want to chat more with me or read my books, both of my books are here. Allhisbooks.com is where my books are available. I do a bunch of things. You can go to jaspreetbindra.com and figure that out. I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Twitter, very active. Happy to connect with you on that. And I will now exit this presentation and stop the sharing so that I can hand it back to the moderator. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jaspreet. It was a very thought-provoking session. And thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with our audience today. I think we learned about 3 of the 7 antibodies that you have to share with us. And that gives me idea for our next session with you. But of course, if our audience wants to delve deeper in those, they can land the book, The Immune Organization, on the weekend if possible, which I would highly advise. So once again, Jaspreet, thank you very much for sharing so openly with us. So it's the Q&A time now. All those who have joined us, keep your questions coming. Remember, 2 lucky questions will be picked at the end of the session for the gift voucher. So keep your questions coming, guys. Jaspreet, the first question is of my own. Taking a leaf from your book, Tech Whisperer, where we've seen many instances. You've been a disruptor of customs yourself. You walked into the office wearing jeans when it was not even fashionable, but now it's omnipresent today. So if you were to look at your crystal ball, if I can call it as such, what is that one thing that you see disappearing from the world as we know of it? Any product, any service, any habit as a result of this pandemic?
That's a good one. I haven't really thought about that. I sincerely do hope that our difficult commutes disappear. And that's very possible, actually, because as work gets more decentralized, half the people will work from office, half the people will work from home at any given point of time. And so the traffic would be much lesser. And, we will not have to wait for driverless cars to come to make traffic less and commutes less and pollution less, therefore. And so, this ills of urbanization like commutes and pollution, etc. I think this COVID crisis, this is one of the one of the benefits that we can draw and make all these ills of urbanization disappear. So that is what I think would disappear if we can be a little bit more disciplined, and if we learn from this pandemic. Those are the things I would like to make them disappear.
Thanks, Jaspreet. I wish for that to also happen. It's good for all of us and save the Mother Earth some trouble.
Sure, absolutely, Rakesh.
Jaspreet, the first question from our audience, I hope I'm audible, and that's to my audience. You can let us know if you want me to speak a little louder. Ashish is pointing out that I may not be very well audible. So the first question is from Shiv Kumar Swami, and he wants to know from your antibody 6, which is about, I think, learning, if I'm not mistaken. How do you one make oneself more impactful in this VUCA scenario, where decision making is all virtual? So how do you really prepare individually using the lens that you have given in the antibody 6?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, and thank you, Kumar, for that. I wanted to dwell more upon it. I was hoping someone would ask. See, most of us, I think there's an echo. Can you hear me fine? Can you hear me well, Rakesh?
Yes, very well.
Thank you. There's a bit of an echo, so I just wanted to check. So, the last 100 years or so, organizations have come up and become these very powerful organizations today. And they have thousands of employees, hundreds of employees. And one of the things, Shiv, we have started kind of expecting is that the organization will prepare us for the future. And that it's the organization's responsibility. We are very entitled in that sense. I think that mindset shift needs to happen, that look, it's not the organization which will prepare you. It's you yourself who needs to get prepared. And so you yourself needs to learn. And let me give you some concrete examples. Now, look, there are so many new things. Coding, for example, learning to code is becoming as important as learning English. Without learning English, you could not land any job a few years back, or a few decades back. And the same thing is going to happen to people who can't code, because it's going to become a life skill. And maybe it doesn't matter how old you are, maybe that's something that you learn. In my personal life, or my personal work life, I, about 6 or 7 years back, decided that every year I will learn one new thing. I will learn one skill every year, and I will invest in that. So I'm not going to wait for the organization to do this. So in one particular year, I kind of invested in time and money and became a professionally certified executive coach, for example. Another year, I invested a lot of money and went to Singularity University in the US to learn about future tech and all these brilliant stuff that is happening across the world. A certain year, I devoted to blockchain, for example. Last year was about the book, okay, and how to write a good book, a differentiated book, which hopefully will become a bestseller, as this one did. And that's something you need to learn. You just don't go write a book. And so if you were to kind of do that every year, I mean, I've missed some years, but if almost every year you were to learn one new skill, that is what will make you very impactful, because suddenly you can do many things. And if one of those or two of those jobs disappear, there are the things that you know. So don't stop your education with your engineering, MBA, CA, or whatever. Continue learning every year or every 18 months something new. Back to you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Jaspreet. I think very, very well said. And to our audience who just heard what Jaspreet had to say about your own learning, this is an advice we got from a lot of masters as well. So I think that's possibly the best advice all of us can get today. Continue to learn every year, pick a skill, and go after it. Thanks for sharing that, Jaspreet. The next one is from Shweta Ram. And Shweta's question is around gig economy you spoke of. And the question is, what is your thought on organizations' allegiance as to how organizations can imbibe this whole gig culture to their advantage?
Sure. So to be very honest, Rakesh, I didn't get the question entirely, but I'll attempt to answer it the best from whatever I understood from it. See, remember, the gig economy is recent symptom of the way the work is going to be in the future. And if you think of the gig economy, suddenly work has gotten decentralized or distributed. Now, there are people who were ordinarily employees, like in the olden world, Zomato would have been a company where every delivery boy would have been an employee of the company, not an entrepreneur. Also, please remember that this gig economy phenomenon is very recent, and it'll take some time to settle itself. And there are, as with any phenomena which happens recently, there's a lot of unrest and a lot of uh, uh, turbulence which happens, and that's happening in the gig economy now. Are these employees workers, not workers? Are they permanent, temporary? My view is that anyway, this permanent, temporary thing is going to disappear going forward. We are all going to be in some kind of a gig work. We'll be working with multiple people anyway. So, therefore, how do you, as you said, the organization culture? I think organizations will need to move from values to a purpose. That what is their purpose on earth? What is their right to exist on earth? What can they do for society? It's the post-capitalist way of thinking in many ways. What can they do for the world? And that will define them. The organizations today, which are not running only after profits or revenue in this COVID scenario, but have started doing something for the country or for society or for the migrants, the purpose, therefore, are the ones which actually employees are going to stick with them even if their salaries get reduced, because they're proud to work with a company which kind of works for a purpose. And so that's how the glue of culture will be maintained. But also, please start thinking of each individual as a company, each of you. You have to have your own skill, your own culture, your own purpose. And as work becomes more and more distributed, it's what is going to matter is what is your skill, your purpose, your culture, rather than the 5 organizations you're going to be working with. And so, this fragmentation is happening. And however esoteric it sounds, actually, COVID has fast forwarded it. When I went to Singularity, for example, was that last year or last year, I met many people in there, all the faculty. None of them, not even one of the 100 people I met, had one job only. Everyone had multiple jobs. So, as they say, what happens in the valley today happens in the world in a few years, and that's where we are going to move. Multiple jobs, individual being more important. So I've hopefully answered some of what you were asking, Shweta, and I'll hand back over to you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Jaspreet. I'll pick up 2 more questions on the same topic from our audience, which possibly will give more clarity to them. The first question from Sharad Jaspreet is, what roles likely will move to gig economy earlier than others? Now, there are traditional businesses, there are traditional roles. It's easier to do this in the tech or maybe in creative field, but a large part of workforce is not employed in such professions. So I think that's a good question. So what roles are likely to move to a gig economy earlier than others? And second question, which is from Mukhtar Ahmed, it's around future of sales and marketing during this pandemic situation. I think we can just possibly juxtapose these 2 questions. What roles, and will sales and marketing also likely to move in this direction?
Okay, so I agree they are good questions, both of them. I haven't really thought about or written about or researched into what are the criteria for roles which move into gig economy faster. And so I probably would not be able to give you a very educated answer. But I think if you were to kind of, the obvious ones, as you said, technology, which started happening a few years back, but it's still, if you think about it, technology is still very centralized. TCS has 400,000 employees, for example. IBM has 300,000 employees. They're all centralized. And one of the things, very interesting thing which has happened is that TCS has said that 75% of its workforce will now be distributed. And what that means is many things. Sure, it saves their real estate costs, etc. It means it's far more difficult for HR departments to keep the flock together, to keep the culture, etc. But it also means that suddenly they can get talent from distributed places where they never really thought they could go to, because they would kind of draw talent from a pool within that city or whatever. But now you can be based anywhere and draw talent from anywhere. There were problems where, because of law and order or even cultural issues, where women couldn't work in night shifts. That changes suddenly because you can work from home on your night shift. And so I think technology, but even within technology, all these changes I think will happen to make it even more gig in that sense. Then the services are the second one. And so banking, insurance, health services will get more and more decentralized. I mean, this whole concept of doctors getting attached to one hospital and you needing to go to that hospital is also disintegrating gradually. Education, massively. So, and most of these jobs, not all, but most of these jobs will be white collar jobs, the ones which we are used to. But then if you see the way transportation has become gig, logistics, food or delivery, grocery, retail. So I think it kind of all of these, and sure, there will always be certain sectors which you can't do this gig stuff. And I'm not saying the gig economy will be the only one. There will be other forms of decentralized work besides the gig economy, but these are some which will be the gig economy earlier. In terms of sales and marketing, that's a bit of a specific question, so I'll just speculate. But the early indications that I'm seeing is, for marketing, for example, I think I wouldn't be surprised if in certain organizations, 100% of marketing becomes digital, or almost 100%. And we are seeing that happening, and that's going to have many effects of what happens to print media and what happens to television. Though you can think of television also as digital; it's delivered digitally now, and we need to figure out analytics, etc. They are better, but I think most marketing, if not all, in certain places will become digital. A lot of marketing will be content related rather than advertising related, in my opinion. Sales is more interesting. Many organizations which I'm working with are trying to see that how they can make sales more and more contactless. And it's not possible everywhere, but because you need if you sell an automobile, for example, you need to meet the person many times. It's a high value sale, but there are great solutions. Streaming commerce, for example, which big in China, will come to India, where you can make a large part, if not 100%, 90%, 80% of that sales process actually digital and many times automated. And so I think that is what is probably going to happen to sales and marketing. Beyond that, I really don't think I'm the expert to answer your question. So I'll hand you back to Rakesh.
Thank you, Jaspreet. Okay, so we'll segue into a topic of digital transformation. There are two questions that again I'm going to combine, Jaspreet. One is from Tejal Kotkar and the other one is from Rajiv B. So speaking of digital transformation, Jaspreet, I think the antibodies or the model that you presented fits very well to very structured big organizations. So Rajiv's question is that given the pandemic and what we are seeing of it, it appears that big will get bigger because they have access to capital, they're more resilient, strong balance sheets, so on and so forth. How relevant these antibodies that you spoke of would be for small, micro, medium businesses or legacy traditional businesses, as Tejal would put it?
Okay, you said two questions. So that's the one?
Yes.
Okay. Rajiv, parts of your question has a philosophical answer, frankly, rather than anything else. So let me just step back and tell you about possibilities which can happen. I can't predict the future exactly. If I could, I would be a much richer, a very rich man, and would exactly know what's going to happen and therefore do accordingly. But 2-3 things. So one is that I have spoken about all these antibodies, and one specific one within that is the number 2, actually, which you probably refer to, which is about digital transformation of business models. So what is happening is that one of the things you've seen in this pandemic is that irrespective of size of company, companies which have a 100% digital model, or as close to 100%, as digital as possible is a word that I introduce, or a term that I introduce in my book, have survived and sometimes even gained. So Zoom as a company, for example, by the way, wasn't like a giant company. It was a middle-sized company in the scheme of things. The streaming guys, for example, and those were big companies. But even the smaller streaming guys, OTT streaming of video, the Hotstars, etc., or the Netflixes of the world. Now, these companies have been proven to be anti-fragile. They have actually gained in this lockdown, and they are 100% digital. Companies which are 100% physical, on the other hand, whose business models are 100% physical, have had to just stop work. They have had like 100% drop in sales, and nothing has happened. And you take hotels, or you take event management, or you take airports, or things like that. So many companies will need to now reimagine their business models, big or small companies. It doesn't matter. They'll have to reimagine their business models to see that what can they do which makes it more and more digital. So let me take a small event company, for example. There are no big event companies. Let's take a small event company. And their business is completely stopped because all events were offline. It meant getting hundreds of people together in one room and doing stuff. Now, as they go forward, it's not that this COVID is going to continue forever, but people's habits are going to change quite a lot. And so I see that in many cases hybrids will emerge. And so in event management, for example, you'll have smaller, more intimate events. Instead of having an event of 500 people, you'll have 50 people or 100 people in a large space, and 10,000 people that the event is going to be streamed to. And the people who attend will be charged 100 rupees, and the people who are being streamed to will be charged 1 rupee or 5 rupees. And so, the net you'll actually, if you do it well, will make more money. And people who want to come physically will, and people who they're used to the Zoom world, etc., will do. And so this is for small companies. Actually, I think there are certain small companies which will gain because of this. So think of hospitality, and I kind of referred to it, but the large, massive hotels, the Las Vegas kind of hotels, the large convention hotels will have a problem. And when I want to go for a holiday now after things open out, I'm not going to go to a large hotel. I'm going to see and select a small homestay where only my family can live, probably, or only a couple of families, so that I can, maintain distancing, etc., and still have a holiday. And so I think the small guys are actually going to win in this case. Now, having said that, philosophically, yes, there is a possibility that the rich become richer. And the already big companies become even bigger and bigger. The thing is, Rajiv, that already big companies are the biggest companies in the world today are those big, massive tech companies. And they have only gained in this pandemic. And so they will probably become even more powerful. And that is a possibility. It's a possibility which I do not want, but is a possibility. So while there will be many small companies which will gain, I think there will be many big companies which will gain too, and many companies, big or small, which will actually die. They will not survive. This is a Darwinian moment in many ways, and there's not much we can do about it. So, philosophical answer. Back to you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Jaspreet. And I guess that's a bitter truth and the bitter pill that a lot of the businesses will have to swallow. Also, small businesses can innovate and stay relevant because they possibly don't have the legacy of what frame of mind you are operating in this crisis will also define. So thank you very much.
I want to, sorry, Rakesh. Can I just stop you for one moment? I wanted to, you said small businesses are more, they can pivot much faster. I'm a small business, very small business. Okay, I don't work for anyone. Okay, I'm like an individual. Okay, or a small business. And when COVID happened, 70% of my business went away. Just kind of gone. Now there are three things you can do. One is that you can just sit and cry. Second is that you can, sit and say that, look, it's all going to come back. The same things which used to happen earlier are going to happen all over again. So all I have to do is for my savings, etc., spend 6 more months, and things will, or maybe 9 months, and things will come up. Or the third is that, as they say, that when opportunity doesn't knock, you have to make new doors. Is to make new doors. And very frankly, in the last 2 to 3 months, there are 3 new businesses that I myself started. One of them completely failed, but one has started taking off from an education viewpoint. And the second one, let's see. So I'm not praising myself. All I'm saying is that I could do this because, as you said, I am smaller and I have less responsibility and I can pivot faster. Bigger businesses do not have that luxury, but they have other strengths. So just wanted to stop you here, Rakesh, back to you.
Thank you, Jaspreet. I think very pertinent and relevant. I'm actually reminded of our one of the earlier sessions when we did. Some of the audience possibly also attended that with Rishad Tobaccowala, and I remember him making exactly the same statement. That he's a one-man show and how he's dealing with this situation, and similar to what you just said, Jaspreet. And I think that's quite a encouraging 2 examples that our audience are hearing from the master. So I think no need for us to think anything else, but just focus on what you just heard from the masters. A big shout out to our audience for their questions. My request to everybody is do let us know your email IDs so the lucky questions can be mailed the vouchers. Thank you very much for all your questions. Okay, so we'll go to the next round of questions, Jaspreet. And this one, I think in your antibody 3, if I'm not, no, it's 3 customer experience, right? Re-engaging customer journey. So this question is from Neha. How do you use digital transformation in these times, or digital communication transformation in these times, to build trust with your customers?
Okay. Okay, 2 separate things. Let's talk about customer experience and then let's talk about the trust piece. Okay. Look, customer experience is, as I've written a lot about it in my first book, The Tech Whisperer, and customer experience, I believe, is the only long-term sustainable differentiator that a business can have. And companies which have the right customer experience can actually earn a lot of money. In Apple, for example, okay, or Disney, for that matter. What has happened now? Customer experience is based on customer journey and how what your customer's journey is and how close what you offer is to that customer's journey. How close your offerings as a business are to that customer journey. Now, what has happened during COVID, Rakesh and Neha, is that customer journeys, as we emerged out of this lockdowns, would have irrevocably changed. So, it takes, as they sometimes say, I mean, there are different researchers which say that it takes between 22 days to 66 days to learn to build a new habit. And we've been in lockdown for more than those days. And so we will develop new habits of the way we are entertained, the way we eat, the way we play, the way we work out, the way we work. And as we emerge, our habits would have changed and our journeys would have changed. We would not want to be in crowded restaurants. We would want, from retail, we would want either pick stuff to come home or pick it from outside the store at a particular time. Our hospitality journey, as I explained earlier, would have changed. And so companies will have to now change their offerings to meet the new customer journey. And that's going to be, and the way to do that, frankly, and that's actually a large way to do that is using technology, using digital tools. And that's actually the digital transformation that they will have to go through. In my book, first book, I write about how digital transformation is actually how you use digital tools and technologies and processes to bridge this gap between the customer's journey and what you offer. And we'll have to do that again, many companies, for the new customer journey. Trust is a different thing, and everything is about trust, we all know. I think trust is not about, you can't only build trust through digital stuff. Okay, that's not the, trust is much bigger than that. And I think a lot of that trust for companies, organizations will come from the way organizations have behaved in this pandemic. There are organizations which have immediately let go their people media houses, some of them, despite being very rich. Some who have not been rich but have still let go a lot of people. Some who have said that, look, you know what, even if we kind of bleed, we're going to keep our people, or we're going to keep our people with 50% salary cuts, but we're going to keep them. And there are many creative ways people have done of few days off, of, different levels of way payment can be, or being very open and saying that, look, for a certain amount of time, we can't work and we have no revenues, and so restaurants, etc. And so how they behave in this pandemic is actually going to be how the trust is going to be. And this is not only for employees. Consumers also see how companies behave towards their employees, towards their stakeholders, etc. And if they behave well as they can, and are completely transparent, and they kind of co-opt the customer as well as the employee in the decisions that they take, will trust be built. And frankly, there's nothing digital about it. It's how a human being or an organization that you are, and that's what is going to build trust. So those were two separate things that I wanted to talk about, not to confuse both of them. And I'll hand back to you, Rakesh.
Sure enough, Jaspreet. I remember, from your book that we just spoke of, Trinity, the Holy Trinity, Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the customer experience.
The preserver, yeah.
Right, and the third one was Shiva, the destroyer, I think, which is more about culture. So the question, Jaspreet, leading to that is, why is it so difficult for organizations to change culture? And from your experience, can you quote some examples or an experience where organization overcame this culture hindrance most effectively in the best possible way?
Yeah, you're right. Culture is the single most difficult thing to change. And in fact, that's why I call it the destroyer, because everything else that you might want to do, digital transformation in this case, everything else you might have, ready. If you cannot change your culture, basically it's over. Most transformations, the successful ones, are successful for many reasons. The ones that fail for only one reason, which is lack of culture change. And there are many reasons it's very difficult to change culture. But I think the two reasons why it's most difficult are the following. One is that the more successful you are, the more difficult it is to change your culture. If you're a wreck, if your company has just gone down the drain or is going down the drain, it's very easy to change culture because you've got nothing to lose. But the more successful you are, the more difficult it is to change culture. And therefore, successful companies, because they have that baggage of success, it's difficult to change. The second, actually three reasons. The second is that, one of the reasons I call it Shiva the Destroyer is that Shiva taught us that to build anything new, you first have to destroy. You can't make new stuff or change stuff until you are prepared to destroy certain parts, earlier parts. You have to burn down a forest to set a new one. But most of us, especially in India, if I may say so, where we are much more emotional than others, want stuff to change, want to build a new company, a new culture, a new way of doing things, but still want to retain what already was. And that cannot be possible. It's just impossible to make that happen. And that's the second reason. So they're unwilling to let go. And the third is culture flows top down. It never comes bottom up. And so the guy at the top needs to change first. And he's the most difficult many times to change. But if not the guy at the top, the senior management team at the top has to change. Because people watch them, and culture always flows downwards. I think a global example of a brilliant customer culture change in which I was an employee and I was there for the beginning of it is actually Microsoft. Amazingly successful company. Even when we used to write off Microsoft 7-8 years back during Steve Ballmer's time, the company was still churning out $35-40 billion of cash every year. And it wasn't a failure by any stretch of the imagination. Amazingly successful, but stock prices down, etc., because people didn't see a future, because there were so many issues around it, the way things were done, the technologies, new products, not getting into new markets, etc. And then Satya came, and in his book, and in fact, his book is called Hit Reset. And so he reset the company. And the primary thing he changed in Microsoft was the culture. And Microsoft today is unrecognizable for what it was 10 years back. And its performance, as you have seen, is just completely off the charts. It's the first $1 trillion company. Its stock is up. It's doing brilliantly well, amazing products, etc. And basically, it has been a cultural change. But what many people don't know is how many people Satya has had to let go. Tens of thousands of people have been let go. Multiple products have been killed. And a lot of destruction has had to happen for this new transformed company to emerge. So that I think is my favorite example in a large company setting. It has just been a completely amazing transformation and change. Back to you, Rakesh.
Thank you, Jaspreet. I think that's another brilliant book that you spoke of by Satya, Hit Refresh. It talks a lot about what you just said around culture and the fact that culture eats strategy for breakfast, as somebody has said. So, a couple of more questions. I guess lots of questions still pending, but I'm cognizant of your time, Jaspreet. So I'll just possibly take 3 more questions with your permission. Would that be all right?
I would actually need to be out by 1. Okay.
Okay.
So
So I'm
if
just
you-
sure. So this building on your current conversation, Jaspreet, the question from Mala Talukdar, and the context of future of work that you spoke of in the talk. What is the role of HR, or what role should HR play in this journey that you spoke of in your talk?
Okay. Good question, Mala. I have started working a lot with CHROs and HR functions of late. And frankly, the reason for that, I never used to work with HR. I mean, I would work with the CIO, CTO, or I would work with the CMO or work with the CEO, but off late. And the reason for that is very simple. As I started, even before COVID or before the pandemic, I started, I've been working in digital transformation for such a long time, and therefore transformation. One of the things which I used to notice with extreme surprise everywhere was that we were talking of digital transformation, but because there was the word digital there, the CEO would be involved, the IT guy would be involved, the CTO would be involved, sometimes the CMO, but there was no HR guy involved on the table at all. Because everyone thought this was about technology. The thing is that transformations are about people. And one of my things which I often say, and is a quote in my Tech Whisperer book also, is that digital transformation does not happen in the factory or in the offices or in the marketplace or in never happens in the boardroom. Digital transfer happens between your 2 ears. Okay, so it's in your head, and that's the space that you have to transform. And frankly, that's why Shiva is also regarded as the most powerful god of the Holy Trinity. Okay, by many. And that Shiva part and this head part, digital transformation happening in your head, is actually owned by HR. I think HR is a wrong word. Actually, the CHRO should be the custodian of a company's culture. And so if he's or she's the custodian of the company's culture, it's a very, very strong reason for that person to be there. Now, what has happened? The good thing, which if the HR people can grasp and take this opportunity in this pandemic, COVID, etc., is that suddenly the HR person is back into technology conversations. Sudden work from home, for example, it's about people and technology, and and equipping people to work at home, and then the whole collaboration tools, and how do you manage to have some kind of a teamwork and culture, etc., using technology. And so HR is back in the game of technology because of this pandemic. And if they leverage this and opportunity in a sense for them, I think they can become, they have the rightful place in all these transformations, disruptions, and the technologies used to manage them. And therefore, become as important as the CEO in that sense, especially with these disruptions and after these disruptions. So I think it's a very significant time for a HR head or an HR person at this time. But this significance should not go away, and they should keep this significance going even after the lockdowns, etc. are over. So I've kept my answer short, Rakesh, because I know you have another one.
Thank you, Jaspreet, and thank you, Maya, for that question. This one is very interesting, perhaps a short one as well. From Ravi Anand. His question is regarding AI, Jaspreet. Is learning compassion not a matter of time for AI, given the way things are going? If they were emote and respond, if they could just learn to understand the context, is that true?
Look, that's a good one, and I think about it also after I read this book a few years back. That look, we never thought that creativity could become an AI trait. So why do we think that compassion cannot become an AI trait? Uh, I told you about the fact that I went to Singularity University a couple of years back, and Singularity University draws its name from the word singularity. Singularity has many meanings. It's the time before the Big Bang. But in the technology context, singularity also means the year, the actual time when human intelligence and artificial intelligence will merge. And after that, artificial intelligence will be greater than human intelligence. And that year is supposed to be 2042. Now, what is that when they say intelligence? What does it mean? Does it mean only the IQ and creativity and various things which the brain can do, or also what the heart can do? So far, everything that is being developed in AI has to do with the brain. So you heard the word neural networks, or even deep learning, or the way people are mapping how the brain works, and then kind of trying to replicate that to make AI. After singularity, when AIs become more powerful than human beings, another book, which is a very favorite book of mine, says that AI is probably man's final invention, our last invention. And after that, AI will invent stuff. And maybe then they can start inventing compassion or love. But the only thing I can tell you is I'll be hopefully dead by then. So I'm not really worrying about it right now. So, but yes, it's possible. Though right now, most of the AI work is happening far more on the cognitive abilities rather than on the compassion or love abilities. But who knows about the future?
Give me goosebumps to hear that. I'm sure, like many others. Thank you, Jaspreet. Jaspreet, okay, the final question from our side. What is one piece of, you spoke about it, but it'll just be good to sort of articulate it again. What is the piece of advice which you want to give to people who are starting their career today in this world, people fresh out of college into the jobs, and people who are in the mid-level, who have done, who got some experience under their belt, who are looking at their next level. So these two sets of audiences, what career advice would you want to give to them?
The advice is the same for both, and I think I've already said that, Rakesh, as you said. But look, people who are starting their careers, please don't think that they're stopping their education, because that's what it has usually. It's sequential. You go to school, stop school. When you go to college, stop college. And then you go and do maybe one more degree, stop it. And then you start doing your work and you stop your education. So don't do that. As I said, learn something new every year, every single year. And for the manager guys, middle people like me, we have a lesser of an ability to learn than the younger people. So you know what? Don't learn something new every year. Learn something new every 18 months. But build a skill every 18 months. Whatever. Learn Japanese if that's what it means. Okay, it doesn't necessarily have to be correlated to technology or coding or whatever. Learn how to deliver food. Okay, learn how to drive if you don't know how to drive. But learn a skill which, and all of these skills will be useful to you. That you suddenly have a portfolio of skills rather than a single skill. There's a very just to complete. There's a very interesting book I read recently. It's by I forget his first name, his second name is Epstein. It's a book called Range. And range is about how the generalists will win in the world rather than specialists. And that's kind of counterintuitive because so far we've been taught how the specialists win rather than generalists. So the way the world is going, generalists will you need to have a portfolio of skills and so therefore building a skill at the year. My advice is the same.
Okay, thank you so much, Jaspreet. It was just lovely having you on the show. Unfortunately, it's time for us to draw the curtain on today's episode. We would have loved to hear you speak, Jaspreet, and I hope we could catch up for a cup of coffee. Build on your thoughts. It'll be just brilliant to continue this conversation going forward. Jaspreet, thank you once again for coming on the show. I'm sure our audience benefited hugely from this conversation, and we look forward to more in the future.
Thank you so much. Great to be here, and thank you very much. I
Thank
look
you,
forward.
Jaspreet. Now it's time for us to call out. Okay, we got Jaspreet.
No.
Yes.
I was saying I look forward to that coffee. Thank you.
Yes, it'll be my pleasure, and I'm gonna call you on that one.
Lovely.
Okay, so it's time for us to announce the two lucky winners. Got many questions coming in over here. It's always a tough job to pick up two lucky ones, and these are in no particular, order. All questions were good, so I'm just gonna reflect on what Jaspreet had said and pick up two questions I thought that he sort of liked or he enjoyed answering them a little more. So the first lucky question for today was from Shiv Kumar Swami, who asked for, the question was around how do you how do you make yourself more impactful in this VUCA scenario. So congratulations, Shiv Kumar Swami. Please send us your email ID, put it on the comment box so that we can ship the vouchers to you. And the second winner for today is Mala Roy Talukdar. I think I earlier called her as Maya. So sorry for that, Mala Roy Talukdar, for asking question on the role of HR and future of HR management. Thank you very much for your questions. I think all questions were brilliant. But you have two lucky winners over here. So I wish you all the best. And thank you once again for coming on to the show. Now, before we end the show, once again, a big shout out to our community support partners. These partners help us spread the message, make sure that more and more people benefit from these sessions, from coming and visiting or listening to our speakers. So a big shout out to community partners, Adgully, Resulticks, Paul Reiter, for being on the show and for making sure that the message is going far and wide to everybody. So thank you, Adgully, Resulticks, Paul Reiter, and Netcore for supporting us. We look forward to your support going forward as well. Thank you once again for joining us, folks. See you in the next session next week, next Friday. I think it's 11:30 if I'm not mistaken. Do log into our Facebook and LinkedIn page to stay updated on all the sessions. Thank you very much.